Did you know that Canada is planning to drastically cut immigration by up to 80% in the coming years? Yes, 80%. For a country that once prided itself on being the most welcoming nation on earth, this sudden shift has left millions around the world asking, why? Is the system broken? Are Canadians turning against immigration? Or is there something deeper, something no one's talking about? From skyrocketing rents to overwhelmed hospitals, crowded cities, and a changing political landscape. There's a storm brewing beneath the surface, and it's changing the future of immigration in Canada fast. But here's the twist. Some experts say this isn't just about numbers. It's about Canada's identity, its values, and its survival. So before you make up your mind, stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see a side of this story that's rarely told. Number 10. Rethinking the purpose of immigration. A country welcomes over 400,000 newcomers in a single year. You have to ask, what's the end goal? Is immigration just about boosting the economy? Is it about filling labor gaps, growing the population, or simply being seen as a compassionate nation on the global stage? For decades, Canada has been a beacon for immigrants, not just for opportunity, but for belonging. But now, as pressures rise and public opinion shifts, a growing number of Canadians and policymakers are asking a much bigger question. Why are we doing this? And who is it really helping? Critics argue that immigration has become more of a numbers game than a nation-building strategy. They say Canada is bringing in people without clear plans for how to integrate, support, or empower them long-term. Meanwhile, many newcomers arrive with degrees and experience, only to find themselves underemployed, undervalued, or ignored by the system. Is that fair? Is it sustainable? And let's not forget the cultural tension. When immigration outpaces integration, it can create division instead of diversity, not because people are different, but because the system failed to build a bridge. So maybe this isn't just about reducing, immigration. Maybe it's about redefining it. What kind of country does Canada want to be in 20 years? And who gets to help shape that future? Before you go, we want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Canada is on the right track? Or is it losing what made it special in the first place? Drop a comment below, hit that like button if this made you think. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into global issues that actually matter. Number 9. Shifting political priorities. Canada's political landscape is changing and fast. For years, both Liberal and Conservative governments supported high immigration targets, often framing them as essential to Canada's economic growth and global image. But now, those very same politicians are changing their tone. Why? It's not just about economics anymore. It's about votes, public pressure, and national mood. In 2023 and 2024, polls revealed a sharp rise in Canadians expressing concern over immigration levels. Suddenly, immigration went from being a fringe talking point to a front-page political issue. In response, politicians across the spectrum have started using words like sustainable, balanced, and review, signaling a move toward restriction. It's not expansion, and it's not just Canada. Around the world, we're seeing the same pattern. The UK has imposed new limits. Australia recently slashed its intake. Germany, too, is under pressure to tighten its borders. Canada, once proud to be the outlier, is now moving in step with these global trends. But here's what's really interesting. This shift isn't always driven by facts. It's often driven by feelings, frustration over housing, jobs, and affordability, even when immigrants aren't directly responsible. Yet immigration becomes the political scapegoat, the quick answer to complex problems. That's the danger. When public sentiment sours, policies follow, not because they're right, but because they're popular as a result. Canada's once strong bipartisan support for immigration is fracturing, and long-term strategies are being replaced by short-term political wins. This shift in political priorities doesn't just affect numbers on a spreadsheet. It shapes the future of who gets in, who stays, who belongs. Questions that go far beyond politics and deep into the soul of the nation. Number 8. Pressure on social services. The most immediate effects of rapid immigration isn't always visible at first until you need to see a doctor. Get your child into school or apply for public assistance. Across Canada, social services are stretched thin, and many believe immigration is adding to the strain. Canada's universal healthcare system, once the pride of the nation, is now struggling to keep up. In provinces like Ontario and British Columbia, wait times for family doctors can stretch from months to over a year. Emergency rooms are overcrowded, and mental health services are booked out weeks in advance. It's not just healthcare. Public schools, especially in immigrant-heavy neighborhoods, are often underfunded and overcrowded. Teachers face growing class sizes and language barriers without additional support. Even simple things like access to affordable daycare have become competitive and limited. Critics argue that the pace of immigration has outpaced the government's ability to expand services. And while immigrants do pay taxes and contribute economically, there's often a lag between their arrival and the system's ability to absorb them, of course. Immigrants aren't the cause of these problems, but their arrival in large numbers can amplify existing weaknesses. It becomes a question of capacity. How many people can Canada realistically support without lowering the quality of basic public services? For many policymakers, this concern is less about immigration being bad and more about it being poorly managed. Without strategic investment in infrastructure, schools, and healthcare, even well-intentioned immigration policy can backfire, leading to resentment, inefficiencies, and burnout across the system. And when public services fail, it's not just immigrants who suffer, everyone does. Number 7. Environmental concerns. When most people think about immigration, they rarely connect it to the environment. But in a country like Canada, known for its vast wilderness, clean air, and natural beauty, that connection is becoming harder to ignore. The logic is simple. More people means more pressure on land. Water and energy resources. Canada's population has grown rapidly in recent years, driven largely by immigration. While growth fuels the economy, it also fuels urban sprawl, deforestation, and increased pollution. Cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and Calgary are expanding outward, turning green space into highways, condos, and shopping centers. A recent study from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives found that urban expansion in high-growth areas has led to a 24% increase in land development over the last decade, much of it cutting into forests, farmland, and wetlands. More people also mean more cars on the road, more waste, more energy use, and higher greenhouse gas emissions, even in a country committed to climate action. And here's the irony. Canada has some of the highest per capita emissions in the world, yet it's trying to grow its population faster than almost any other developed nation. Environmentalists argue that these two goals, rapid population growth and sustainability, are fundamentally at odds. You can't promise to lower emissions while adding millions of new residents without a serious plan for green infrastructure, public transit, and sustainable housing. But that plan hasn't kept up. As a result, concerns are growing that immigration, or more accurately, the way we manage growth, could be undermining Canada's climate goals. In a world facing a climate emergency, every policy decision matters. In immigration, once seen as a completely separate issue, is now being pulled into the heart of Canada's environmental debate. Number 6. Labor market mismatch. Canada brings in hundreds of thousands of skilled immigrants every year: doctors, engineers, teachers, and scientists. But here's the painful truth. Many of them end up working in jobs far below their qualifications. This is what experts call a labor market mismatch, when the skills immigrants bring don't align with the opportunities available. Or worse, when they're blocked by bureaucratic red tape. A heartbreaking example: a neurosurgeon from India driving a taxi in Toronto, a civil engineer from Nigeria working as a warehouse packer in Calgary. Stories like these aren't rare, they're shockingly common. Why does this happen? For starters, Canada's system for recognizing foreign credentials is slow, complex, and inconsistent across provinces. Many immigrants are told they need to upgrade their education or experience, even if they've worked in their field for 20 years overseas. On the other side, many employers prefer Canadian experience, even if the newcomer has done the exact same job elsewhere. This disconnect leaves thousands of skilled professionals underemployed, working jobs that don't match their talents. While Canada still faces shortages in those same fields, it's a lose-lose situation. Immigrants feel frustrated and stuck. The economy misses out on their potential, and Canadians still wait months to see a specialist or get an infrastructure project completed. Critics argue that before inviting more skilled workers, Canada must fix the system that's failing them. Otherwise, it's not just unfair, it's inefficient. Because immigration is supposed to be a win-win. But when highly qualified newcomers are sweeping floors instead of saving lives, something is clearly broken. Number 5. Rising anti-immigrant sentiment. Canada has long been seen as a global role model for multiculturalism. But beneath the surface, something is changing, and not for the better. Over the past few years, there's been a noticeable rise in anti-immigrant sentiment across the country. Not just on anonymous message boards or fringe political groups, but in mainstream conversations, community meetings, and even national polls, 2024 survey by Ledger found that more than half of Canadians, to 52%, believe immigration levels are too high. That's a sharp increase compared to just a few years ago. Why this shift? People are feeling the pressure. They're seeing rising rents, longer hospital wait times, and more competition for jobs and public services. Even if immigrants aren't directly responsible, they often become the scapegoats for broader systemic issues. And when frustration meets fear, it creates division. We've seen more open complaints about foreigners taking jobs, growing resistance to housing projects for newcomers, and spikes in hate crimes targeting visible minorities, especially in large cities. It's important to be clear. This isn't about the majority of Canadians turning hostile. Most still support immigration in principle. But public tolerance has limits, especially when people feel their own quality of life is being threatened. And that's where things get dangerous. When anti-immigrant sentiment starts influencing policy, it can lead to reactive decisions, not smart. Planned reforms, worse still, it can erode social cohesion, turning communities against each other and immigrants into political pawns. This rising sentiment isn't just a social issue, it's a policy one. Because no immigration plan can succeed without public support, and once that trust is broken, it's incredibly hard to rebuild. Number 4. Cost of living. Ask any young Canadian today what's stressing them out, and chances are they'll say, it's too expensive to live here. From groceries to gas, rented daycare. The cost of living in Canada has skyrocketed, especially in the last few years. And while inflation and global economics play a major role, there's growing concern that rapid population growth is making things worse. High immigration means more people are competing for the same resources, especially housing. In major cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, demand for homes has exploded, far outpacing what's available. The result? Bidding wars, record-breaking rents, and rising homelessness. As of 2024, average rent for a one-bedroom in Toronto has passed $2,600 per month, and it's not slowing down. Meanwhile, grocery prices have jumped over 20% since 2020, and childcare spots are booked out months in advance. This isn't to say immigrants are the cause, they're not. But when hundreds of thousands of people arrive each year without a parallel increase in housing, infrastructure, or services, it creates an imbalance. It's simple supply and demand. More people means more pressure and higher prices. The frustration is growing. Many young Canadians feel they've been priced out of their own future, unable to afford homes, start families, or even move out of their parents' basements. And some are starting to point the finger at immigration policies that don't match economic reality. Policymakers are being forced to face a tough truth. You can't keep raising immigration targets while ignoring the cost of living. Because when basic survival becomes unaffordable, support for immigration, no matter how well-intentioned, begins to erode. Number 3. Economic displacement of citizens. One of the most sensitive yet unavoidable parts of the immigration debate is the fear of economic displacement. In plain terms, are Canadian workers being pushed aside in their own job market? In theory, immigration fills labor shortages and boosts productivity. But in practice, the picture is more complicated. Many Canadian workers, especially in blue-collar and entry-level sectors, say they're seeing wages stagnate and job opportunities shrink. Not because they're unqualified, but because they're being outcompeted by cheaper labor, often brought in through temporary foreign worker programs. A 2023 study from UBC found that in industries like construction, retail, and hospitality, the increase in low-wage migrant labor correlated with slower wage growth and reduced bargaining power for local workers. Take the example of a young tradesman in Alberta who said, "I've got the skills, I've got the training, but employers keep hiring foreign workers who cost less and don't ask questions." The result? A growing sense of resentment, especially in small towns and rural communities where job markets are already fragile. At the same time, some argue that immigrants aren't replacing local workers. They're taking jobs Canadians no longer want. But that statement oversimplifies the issue. The deeper problem lies in how the labor market is structured, and whether government policies are incentivizing employers to look for the cheapest option. Rather than investing in Canadian workers, if immigration policies create conditions where employers see newcomers as cheaper and easier, it puts downward pressure on wages and can lead to exploitation on both sides. The conversation here isn't just about jobs, it's about fairness, competition, and whether economic policy is truly benefiting everyone, or just the bottom line. Number 2, infrastructure. Strain. It's one thing to grow a population, it's another to keep up with it, as Canada's cities expand rapidly. One of the most pressing challenges is the strain on infrastructure. Roads, public transit, hospitals, water systems, and schools. They were never designed to handle this pace of growth. Walk through downtown to Toronto during rush hour and you'll see it firsthand. Packed buses, overcrowded subways, and traffic so bad it takes an hour to go 5 kilometers. Hospitals are facing similar pressure. ERs are overwhelmed, surgical wait lists are growing, and family doctors are harder to find than ever. According to a 2023 report from Infrastructure Canada, demand in high-growth regions is outpacing infrastructure expansion by more than 2:1. The problem isn't just funding, it's planning. Municipalities are struggling to build fast enough, while red tape, zoning restrictions, and labor shortages delay critical projects. Add in climate resilience, aging systems, and rising costs, and the gap keeps growing. Immigration adds more pressure, not because newcomers don't belong, but because the system isn't expanding fast enough to support them. Schools are another flashpoint. In cities like Brampton and Surrey, classrooms are over capacity. Portables are popping up in schoolyards and teachers are stretched thin. Public transportation is frequently delayed, and roads are clogged with commuters from newly built suburbs that lack proper transit infrastructure. This isn't about blaming immigrants. It's about infrastructure lag. Canada welcomed over 1.2 million new permanent and temporary residents in 2023 alone. But if the roads, hospitals, and schools can't absorb that growth, it leads to frustration, inefficiency, and a decline in quality of life for everyone, new and old Canadians alike. Number 1, housing crisis and overcrowding. If there's one issue dominating headlines in Canada right now, it's the housing crisis, and immigration is often caught in the crossfire. Across the country, from Vancouver to Halifax, finding an affordable place to live has become a daily struggle. Rent for a basic one-bedroom apartment has soared above $2,500 in many major cities. And even small towns are seeing record-high home prices. For many, the dream of homeownership feels completely out of reach. But here's the deeper issue. Canada is growing faster than it can build. In 2023 alone, the country welcomed over 1.2 million new permanent and temporary residents. But housing construction didn't keep up. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation (CMHC) has warned that to restore affordability by 2030, the country needs to build 5.8 million new homes. And we're nowhere close to that pace. This isn't just about prices. It's about overcrowding, evictions, and long wait lists for subsidized housing. Immigrant families are often the hardest hit, forced to live in basement apartments, shared housing, or move far outside city centers where transit and services are limited. The tension is growing. Canadians are frustrated, newcomers are struggling, and policymakers are caught between ambitious immigration targets and a broken housing market. Critics argue that bringing in more people without building more homes is a recipe for disaster, not because immigrants are the problem, but because the infrastructure isn't ready, and when too many people chase too few homes, everyone loses. The housing crisis has become ground zero in the debate over immigration. Because no matter how open a society wants to be, if people can't afford a place to live, it becomes impossible to build a life for anyone. If you've made it this far, you're part of a deeper conversation now. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. Every voice adds to the larger picture. And if something here stayed with you, feel free to share it in the comments. For those who wish to follow this journey as it unfolds, subscribing is a quiet way to stay connected.